Coming off a Big Ten win against Northwestern, the Hawkeyes hit the road to pay a visit to a friendly face. We will talk Purdue and Iowa Big Ten Western Division showdown coming up on Saturday here at Hawkeyes Live, right on the Voice of College Football. Corey Braddock joining us as he always does. He's the guy that makes this all possible. Join him on From the Hawkeye of the Storm. That's where you get your Iowa football and basketball content, of course, with the Hawkeyes playing their first game here just in the last few nights. Corey, how are you?
I'm good. Exhibition last night. It was an exhibition.
Oh, exhibition game. Sorry.
Didn't really count towards anything. But, yeah, women's hoops, they're preseason ranked number 4 in the country. So there'll be some women's coverage as well. But I was getting a chuckle out of you whenever I mentioned women's basketball. But did the post-game show last night. So, yeah, no, it's a busy time of year with basketball starting up. And, of course, football's not slowing down. But these last 4 weeks are intriguing, Mark. It's very, very intriguing. Fans have a lot of different perspectives coming out of that Northwestern game. I know we've got Grant Michael of the Big Time Boiler on YouTube. He's going to be jumping on with us here in a few minutes. But I had somebody ask me last night, Mark, I guess we can jump into it if that's okay with you. I had somebody last night ask me about football. And I love how people ask me permission. Can I ask, are you okay with answering a football question? Of course, it's November, October 31st. Of course, we can talk football. But he asked me, is it more likely that Iowa wins out or loses out? And without hesitation, I said it's more likely that they lose out. And the question is, and this was a question that was brought up during the postgame show with Coach Patterson on Saturday. But now that I've had a few days to digest this, I think I have an answer to this question, I think. The question is, Mark, and I'll ask you because I know you watched some of that Iowa game. Right? You watched some of the Northwestern Iowa game?
Very little.
Okay.
But it's Northwestern and Iowa, considering everybody else that was playing at the same time. But I did check in a few times, yes.
There's no question about it. Iowa opened holes for its backs. They protected Spencer better than they have the entire year. Spencer was accurate for the most part. Made the makeables. Brian Ferentz called a very conservative game because they were able to protect him. And it was reminiscent of, Mark? It was very reminiscent of 2020. Like Spencer was not good in 2020. We know those first 2 games Spencer was okay at Purdue, but it was a bad game for Brian Ferentz, calling 50 pass plays at home against Northwestern. They lose that game. They fall to 0-2, and then they win 6 straight because they had a running game and they protected Spencer. And the Northwestern game Saturday felt like 2020. And the reason I said it's more likely, in my belief, it's more likely that Iowa will lose out than win out. And I'm certainly not predicting that they're going to lose out, but it's more likely that would happen is because, Mark, my experience in sports, especially Iowa sports, and you can comment on this as well on a macro level, but it just appears to me, it seems to me that trends or averages, probabilities, they tend to even out and return to the norm or return to the mean, as I said last night. And if you think about it, what is the mean of the Iowa offense in recent months, years? What is the mean? It's bad. So I understand guys are going to make improvements. There's no question. And I think clearly there were some improvements made because I think Northwestern is comparable to Nevada, maybe even a little bit better. Probably a better talent than Nevada, but I don't know who would win that game. But they pushed Northwestern around better than they pushed Nevada around back in September. But my point is, they looked like a different line. They looked like a different offense on Saturday. I tend to think that things tend to even out and return to the mean, and you hope there's substantial improvement. But it's not I don't think it's going to be nearly as drastic as it appeared on Saturday. And that's not stating the obvious. Everybody knows Northwestern's 1-7. That's a train wreck of a football team right now, Mark. I don't know what happened to them. And I don't know what's going on in that program. It's a weird situation after beating Nebraska the first week and then losing to FCS and MAC teams and getting blown out to, the worst offense in the country. So I don't know about Northwestern, but the point is, Saturday is going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be just a very interesting game. And not even like the storylines with Tyrone Tracy and Charlie Jones. Sure, those are interesting. The players today at Iowa, interviews I listened to made it sound like they've been kind of looking forward to this game for 6 months or so, or whenever Charlie announced his transfer intentions. And that makes sense. I mean, they had this game marked, but you don't normally hear that out of Iowa players' mouths, right? Every game is that, this is the most important game on the schedule, and the next game is the most important game on the schedule. So it's going to be an interesting game. Purdue gets into the backfield at a lot higher rate than Northwestern does. There's no question about it. Petrus has proven he needs everything around him to be working. I think can we agree on that, Mark? He needs a run game, he needs pass pro, and he needs receivers that don't drop the ball. And on Saturday, all those things happened. But I just don't have confidence that all of a sudden all those things clicked and our problems are resolved. And the other battle that Iowa fans, and this is not me speaking on this, I've heard other Iowa fans make this comment to me on a number of occasions these last 2 weeks. There's Iowa fans that are torn because they want to see Iowa do well, but they feel like if Iowa wins 3 of these last 4 games, and let's keep in mind that Wisconsin, even though they've kind of recovered since firing Chryst, they're down. Nebraska is Nebraska. They've got a good chance at winning 2 of the last 4 games. You could maybe get 3 of the last 4. And if you get 3 of the last 4, all of a sudden you're 7-5. You win a bowl game, you're 8-5. And some fans have asked me, Corey, is that enough to enable Kirk to keep Brian on? And that's the problem that we're facing right now as a fan base. It's what it is. And some fans will say, well, how dare you even suggest that you should root against your team? And I'm not suggesting that. But Mark, you're nodding. You understand exactly where I'm coming from with this.
Well, I would respond that wouldn't be enough with the offense continuing to underperform, even the 8-5 record, if I wasn't aware of the way Kirk Ferentz responds to those questions about the lack of productivity on the offensive side, that a win total justifies the lack of offense. So if they can get to 8-5, then he may dismiss the issues on offense to say, hey, we were hot down the stretch. We finished at 8-5 when we were 3-4 at one point. We will hear 5 out of 6 out of his mouth a number of times at any possible opportunity to justify the offense being ranked, maybe surging up the statistical ranks to number 124 in the nation, let's say.
And they're up to 129 now. For the record, this is the highest they've been all year. They're 129 ahead of the likes of the New Mexico Lobos and the Minutemen of UMass. So I'm just telling you, the sample size is too big for them to make a big jump. If they had, even if they played like they did Saturday, the rest of the games, despite the fact that these are much better opponents down the pipeline, what is the growth? Potential for growth. Could they get into the inside of 110? I think that'd be hard to do. So either way, we're looking at 100 plus offense again, and likely 115, 120 plus offense. So, but you're right. Last year it was dismissed. Last year, the offensive ineptitude was dismissed because, hey, as Kirk Ferentz says, I don't know if you're aware, Mark, but we won 10 games last year. So there's a reason why fans feel this way. And I don't know. It's just an intriguing game Saturday. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll be there. I'll be in Ross 8 on Saturday. So I'm just intrigued all around to see Charlie Jones, to see Tracy, and to see what Petrus does on the road.
The manner in which he restated the Kirk Ferentz comment to the one media member who asked that question made me, without other, obligations and so forth, want to travel out to Iowa just for a news conference, just to show up at a news conference and ask a few questions.
I don't want this to happen, but Iowa fans, we've talked about their loyalty, and so many fans have been upset. But just based on this one win Saturday, and there are still plenty of people who are obviously not happy, and nor should they be, based on a win over a 1-7 football team. But I just know how loyal Iowa fans are, and a lot of Iowa fans seem to think in the same terms that Kirk Ferentz thinks. So if they do win 3 of their last 4, whether it's a conscious way of thinking or a subconscious way of thinking, there are going to be Iowa fans that sort of excuse the offense because, well, Kirk took us to just 7-8 wins again. So that's a down year. I'm here for the ride. We could always be Nebraska, Mark. I hear that all the time. We could always be Nebraska. We could always be Nebraska.
As you've addressed in the past, Corey, there's a fear of going back in time to the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Lauderberg, Cummings, yeah.
And not looking at it with an optimistic look of
right.
We've got a really solid, strong football brand with all this respect due to Kirk Ferentz, due to Hayden Fry, but it can be propelled into the future, certainly. Before we get our guest here on board, I'm curious to ask you, because I caught many of the Big Ten coaches' news conferences, but did not catch Kirk. Was he asked about Charlie Jones' success?
He was. You want me to read you the quote?
I'm fascinated to hear it.
So I want to get your reaction. I know we've got Grant Michael here waiting, but let me give you his reaction to the comment. So Kirk was asked about Charlie Jones' improvement his numbers, right, since he left Iowa. He says, and I quote, "We'll never know what would have happened if he was here. We saw him make great improvement, I thought, in the spring. We were really excited about that, and then he's not here." So I'll tell you what that tells me. All right. And we've done plenty of criticizing of Kirk Ferentz in recent press conferences. If that's the most controversial thing he says, then give me a break. But what I first thought when I read that is it appeared to me, because by the way, I've not read the transcript, have not watched the press conference. So tone, and as Kirk Ferentz brought up last week, tone is important, right, in these press conferences. But what I thought when I heard that was, so the narrative that Kirk might kind of be trying to push with this is, okay, Charlie Jones' success at Purdue this year is not a result of Purdue's system being better. It's simply a result of we never got to see the 2022 version of Charlie Jones, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, he made the improvement here. We developed him in spring ball, and unfortunately, he chose to leave early, so we'll never know what he... Isn't that kind of what you picked up on there, Mark? Am I wrong? That's what I picked up on.
Of course, he knows better than that, but that's something that I'm sure he feels comfortable with the status that he has and with the football knowledge to be able to pass that on and know that he's most likely not going to be challenged on that point.
And you can't, I mean, listen, I'll be honest, we can't say definitively that Charlie did not make a big jump in the spring. But Don Patterson's one who made it very clear how he felt about Charlie Jones last year, and felt that Charlie Jones was underutilized and was reliable catching passes, was probably the most reliable had the most reliable hands on the team, was the fastest receiver on the team, was the best deep threat on the team. So he was underutilized last year. I don't buy the fact that somehow Iowa developed him into some phenom that now Jeff Brom is just somehow feeding off of. I think it's clear, given the reputations of both schools, that Iowa has a hard time developing wide receiver talent. And Charlie understood that. He also understood that regardless of development, his game was not going to be highlighted at Iowa. And he said that. He's went on the record and said that he went to Purdue because of their style of play and the fact that they could highlight his strengths. So fascinating matchup this Saturday, because let's not forget, it is strength against strength. I mean, Purdue's offense versus Iowa's defense. So that's probably not going to be where the game is won, although it could be. I mean, David Bell and I know Rondale Moore didn't do a ton against Iowa, but who's the guy the other day we were talking about? 2017. Our big-time Boiler guy is going to be able to tell us this. Grant will be able to remind me who the receiver was that they hit over and over and over again in that 2017 game. And I just looked this up during the post-game show on Saturday. Had a weird name. We'll get that from him in a minute. But my point is, the defense has been burned. As kind of an outlier to the season, the defense has been burned a number of times. Not Terry Wright. I see that suggestion. Not Terry Wright. Anthony Mahungu. All right, there you go. Anthony Mahungu. I think he burned him for like $120 and they threw like 5 or 6 deep shots in one drive to him, and I think Iowa deployed 3 different corners in one drive against him. And anyways, so they do have the ability to attack Iowa's defense. We understand that. But again, You watch that game from last year, and I know there's no George Karlaftis on this roster. Spencer Petras maybe played his worst game of the year against Purdue last year. Remember, Iowa was number 2 in the country when that game came calling to Kinnick.
Iowa Hawkeyes Live is brought to you by Jean Arthur Associates for all your insurance needs, whether they be home, auto, life insurance, business, and so forth. Please grab the link in the description section of any of the videos here at Hawkeyes, at the Voice of College Football. Any of the videos description section, you can grab the link right at the top of the box and follow that to make your instant quote. Check out whether you can save on insurance, and certainly also, if you go to Jean Arthur Associates on Facebook and Instagram, like, follow, and share, and you'll be automatically entered into our contest for 2 Iowa-Nebraska football tickets for the final game of the season. So quite a deal right there. Our Nebraska-Iowa ticket giveaway at Jean Arthur Associates. Again, just go to Facebook and Instagram, like, follow, and share right there. All right. Yeah, we got Grant Michael on the line, the big time boiler. Grant, how you doing today? Appreciate you being here.
Doing well, guys. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I'm not saying this because you're here, but this Purdue football program and the team in particular fascinates me. They're a separation from the rest of the style of play in the division. I love watching Aiden O'Connell spin the ball. We've seen a tremendous wide receiver room in recent years, Charlie Jones being the most recent addition to great success, because it's not necessarily a state school in the mold of a lot of other schools. It's also interesting from a recruiting standpoint and just the importance of the brand and what it means to that state or may not. That's an argument there. So this Purdue football team, I've seen them quite a bit this year, as I typically do. The end of the Syracuse game stands out to me because I so much wanted them to pull that game out. Thought that they got ripped off by the officials. Thought that the officials have every right to try to monitor and reel in player behavior, but in that context of what was going on in the game, needed to just back off, allow the game to be won and lost by the players, not call 30 yards of penalties in the last 45 seconds of the game to set up Purdue for a loss. They still lost the game and didn't make the plays on defense to prevent the loss. The Maryland game was exciting. Odd result there at Wisconsin, getting dominated in that game. When you put it all together with the date against Illinois coming up, that's going to be crucial, depending on whether they can win this game. What's your read on Purdue's level of play within this division?
Well, it's kind of weird. You know, you asked me that before the Wisconsin game, I probably would have given you a different answer. But this is kind of every game Purdue's played this year has kind of been pretty close, which is I think Jeff Brom said it best. You know, if you want to see a 4-quarter game, come to the Purdue game, because this team doesn't have the ability apparently to blow anybody out. And which, you know, at least for winning the games, you know, 5-3 were actually exactly where I thought we'd be. Actually better, because I thought we would have 3 Big Ten losses by now, which we only have 2. But I mean, there's definitely some deficiencies on this team. There's some problems. Secondary is a big time concern, but so it's just kind of weird. It's kind of up and down. You know, you think we'd be feeling pretty good about ourselves, but man, it's just been a weird year. Definitely a weird year.
And they're dealing with injuries in the back end, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we had Chris Jefferson apparently quit due to mental health. He's not coming back. They're beat up back there. And I think part of that Wisconsin game, you know, the bye week did come at an absolute perfect time. His team was beat up. You know, they had quite a few games on the road at Maryland, at Wisconsin, or excuse me, at Minnesota, which they won. 2 games I thought they would actually lose. They won against Minnesota and Maryland. And they were pretty beat up, I think, limping into that Wisconsin game. So, you know, if it wasn't for those interceptions, I think it would have been a little bit better of a game. But Aiden O'Connell, unfortunately, has not ever played Wisconsin well. And it showed up again last 2 Saturdays ago.
And people need to realize Purdue is coming off a bye week. So whatever that means. I mean, I know obviously Iowa hasn't utilized its bye weeks very well these last 2 years, getting blown out to Wisconsin last year off a bye and getting blown out to Ohio State this year. This is obviously a game, Grant. No Iowa fan can escape this fact. Purdue has owned this rivalry. And for the record, I brought up Anthony Mahungu in 2017. Mark, this is a number I'm going to be releasing a preview for this game here tomorrow. I'm going to be researching this number again because I've done it in the past. But I can just recite off the top of my head the last 5 matchups. Okay. So 2017, they got burned by Mahungu for 100-plus yards. 2018, they got burned by Terry Wright, not Milton, right? Terry Wright for 100-plus yards. Am I right, Grant?
Yes.
Would have been a Terry Wright year. 2019, they got burned at home to David Bell. Won that game. Brandon Smith had a big game for Iowa. Won that game narrowly, but they gave up over 100 yards to Bell. Then gave up, 200 yards or something to Bell in 2020, and then gave up a ton of yards, like 180 yards last year to Bell. So, I don't think there's no question. I can tell you with 1,000% confidence, there is not another team in the Big Ten, Mark, that Phil Parker's defense has allowed 100-plus yards to a single receiver for 5 straight seasons. That's an incredible statistic. And so, obviously, the candidate for that this year would clearly be Charlie Jones, who's doing it just about against every opponent. Iowa players today in their interviews sounded motivated. I have no question that they're motivated. I don't think, at least according to what guys like Nico Reganey and Kayvon Merriweather and those guys, Riley Moss, were talking about, I don't think those guys are looking for blood. I think a lot of those guys are still friends with Charlie. There's this narrative with some Iowa fans that Charlie did Iowa dirty. Give me a break. I hate hearing that. Look, he left after spring ball. He got to look at what was going to be the product and didn't like it and has every right to leave. Made a good decision for himself. So my point is that's going to be the matchup to follow, not just because of the fact that he's an Iowa transfer, but because Purdue seems to always get a receiver over 100 yards against Iowa. Ironically enough, none of those receivers I just mentioned were Rondale Moore, who might be the best of all of them. I just think that's hilarious. But, fascinated by the matchup. And you brought up the secondary, Grant. I think one thing to look for, last year they haunted Spencer Petras in that pocket, and specifically George Karlaftis. Just that Iowa offensive line looked absolutely helpless, very reminiscent of the Big Ten championship game last year against the likes of Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo. So my question is, can Purdue put that type of pressure on Petras? Because I'm going to tell you something right now. You've watched enough Iowa football this year, Grant. If they get in the pocket early and often, Iowa's not winning this football game. There is no way Iowa wins this football game if they can consistently get pressure on Spencer Petras, because we understand that Iowa typically can't run the football well. I know Northwestern there were big holes on that offensive line. Iowa was pushing the Wildcats around. That's not going to happen against Purdue. So I really do believe it will come down to, can Petras, will he have time to make throws? Because if he doesn't, he is not proven to be able to make accurate, calm plays under pressure. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. This Purdue team, for the most part, has been very solid against the run. I think they're even like a top 30 rush defense. And 2 weeks ago, I keep saying last week, because Wisconsin, that was the first time they had let somebody go for 100 yards on them all year individually. So Iowa, obviously, Petras. Yeah, you mentioned watch a lot of Iowa football. Kind of like a train wreck or a car wreck that you pass on the side of the road. That offense, anyway, that you can't help but look at. So tune in every once in a while. But yeah, I think Petras, especially last week too. I didn't watch a whole lot of the game, but when he's comfortable, he can do enough to be dangerous at times. And so that's kind of always been the key for Purdue is defensive pressure and getting to the quarterback. And this year they've been okay. But what scares me the most is, and I know you guys have talked about Iowa's offensive line being a problem, but Purdue have the ability to make an offensive line that struggled all year look like all Big Ten certain weeks. So I wouldn't be shocked if Iowa, and also Kaiser Jenkins, our best defensive lineman, has been hurt. Got hurt against Wisconsin, may not play Saturday. That would be a big loss. So for this game, as a Purdue fan, I'm usually pretty optimistic. I'm a little nervous about this game, to be honest with you. I just think with our secondary issues, Petras got some confidence last week. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a semi-competent game and we can't get to him and your defense does its thing. We could have a dogfight on our hands and could very well lose this game.
Well, just remember real quick, I know you got to get going. Spencer's only played one semi-competent game this year.
Oh, I know.
So, and it was against Northwestern, who's 1-7. The numbers say you know Purdue better than I do. The numbers say Purdue has a top 50 defense. So you're just talking about their struggles in the secondary, and you're saying that the defensive line can make Iowa's offensive line look good. I think again, did Iowa's offensive line just click all of a sudden? We'll find out. But I think you and I are kind of in different places, because I have a lot of confidence in Purdue winning this football game right now. I'm not going to give a score prediction, but I just think the matchup, just like in past years, I'm not saying that they're going to score a ton of points. I think I would give Phil Parker the benefit of the doubt that finally he's going to learn to make some adjustments in this game, but I just don't know how Iowa runs the football.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that Phil, takes it personally. He gets it figured out, and I don't know if this is going to happen. I think Purdue's going to win, but that just if Peters can play a semi-competent game, which I don't know if he can, that he's going to have to throw the ball, because I think Purdue's able to stop the run. But
exactly.
But yeah, sorry to do that to you guys, though. Yeah, wife's got to leave, so I got to take off. Wish we could give more time, but
we appreciate you being here, Grant.
Yep.
Grant Michael,
Thanks,
the big
guys.
time boiler. Join him right here on YouTube. Thanks,
Thank you,
Grant.
sir. Well, your thoughts, Mark? We Grant and I kind of on different pages. It seems like he's worried about Purdue, and I'm kind of just confident that Purdue's going to take care of business.
Well, I think that you're a fan of a team that is not going to factor in the division race unless just chaos ensues. And he is looking at a team that, if all goes well, is going to be playing for a division championship and head to head with Illinois in a few weeks. So when you're playing with house money versus whether you're trying to protect a position to win a championship, I think those are different mindsets. Again, the aerial attack versus the elite defense always intrigues me, and I am intrigued by the Purdue program. I just didn't state that because he was here, but I think it's a unique program to the Big Ten, just in the way the program's built, their history, and the current team, the way it's made up. Joe Tiller obviously set the modern standard for what Purdue could be, but Jeff Brom, I saw a statistic the other day that Purdue football was like 3-30 in the Big Ten. They were just bottomed out prior to Jeff Brom. So a 500 record wouldn't usually get you a statue built, but at this point, the way he has upgraded the program, I think, is significant. And if you look at Illinois having to go to Michigan, which is almost I expect Brett Bielema and the boys to show up well and give it a go, but they're going to be a decided underdog. That if Purdue wins this game against Illinois, they can even lose another game, and it might be this Saturday against Iowa, and still win the division and get to a Big Ten championship game. So they have a lot to play for. They
do. And this has kind of been the year so far for Iowa of teams getting off the schneid. Iowa State got off the schneid against Iowa. Iowa had dominated that series. Iowa had dominated Illinois. Illinois gets off the schneid. So, is it possible that Iowa finds a way to get off the Purdue schneid? Maybe. And again, I mean, Phil Parker, I've said this before, but those numbers that we just brought up, the over 100 yards for 5 straight years to one single receiver against Purdue, that is so unlike Phil Parker. And limiting big plays is such a big part of what he stands for. And they'll nickel and dime you to death too. But Iowa gave up a lot of big plays to guys like Mahungu and Terry Wright and David Bell. So, man, you do feel like eventually he's going to figure it out. But to me, it just still comes down to, regardless of what Phil does and regardless of what Phil how he figures this out, Mark, let's not forget that just a few weeks ago, Iowa scored 6 points and lost to Illinois. They scored 10 points to beat, 7 points to beat South Dakota State. They scored 7 points and lost to Iowa State. So, they scored 13 offensive points against Rutgers. So certainly there's a potential. O'Connell showed on Saturday that he can make mistakes. He can he can throw picks at times. So can Iowa bait him into making mistakes. Grant brought up how Wisconsin's kind of owned Purdue. So 2 different stories there, but no, it'll be fascinating, and it's a sold-out stadium. I expected it to potentially be a night game, given the stakes for Purdue. It's 11 a.m., which is going to be interesting to see what the crowd is like that early. I don't really know. Purdue used to not really, during the, Daryl Hazel years, it didn't really produce much of anything as far as crowd noise, but it's sold out. And so it'll be interesting to see which team gets off to the quicker start with probably a late arriving home crowd. And, again, can Iowa run the football? I think it's the biggest storyline.
As you've outlined, it's a bad matchup for Iowa, and that's the reason why they have lost most of the games recently in the series, because you're talking about a 50% winning percentage team in Purdue in the last 4 or 5 years, winning the majority of the games against a team that's winning 70% of its games. So that's an aberration. It's an outlier, and it speaks directly to the matchup. And Aiden O'Connell, I think the only thing he suffers from is what a lot of gifted throwers of the football suffer from. He has supreme confidence that he can fit the ball wherever he wants to. And it's amazing to watch most times, but of course he makes a calculated risk and mistake usually once or twice a game.
And
just so it's not 3 or 4 times, then it becomes an issue.
Stroud has done the same thing. We've talked about that. He's thrown some picks this year.
Yeah.
But he's still CJ Stroud, and Aiden O'Connell is still O'Connell. Those are the 2 best quarterbacks in this league. So fascinating matchup. I do think we should add this in, Mark. I know we've got about 20 minutes left, but Iowa did receive a commitment this week from a JUCO transfer, Ontario Thompson, defensive line transfer, announced at midnight on Saturday. So I can admit that I did not quickly get on the computer and produce a video. So I'll be releasing something here probably later today, potentially tomorrow. See where we get this evening. But good grab for Iowa. Reportedly runs a 4.6 at 295. So that's impressive if that's the case. Now he's saying he's the one reporting, hey, I run a 4.6. So I'm sure that if he was at the combine, he wouldn't run a 4.6. But he does have a good motor. He was watching him on tape. Another example of Phil, despite some of the struggles right now on offense, and I produced a video earlier this morning, way early this morning, on Iowa's struggles recruiting linemen. Well, not even just linemen, just offensive players in general. Because they've actually done pretty well along that offensive line, even though they've had attrition. They're not struggling recruiting defensive backs, defensive linemen, linebackers. They're stacked, and they're going to lose some guys. We'll see who returns. I know the season's not over yet, but it'll be interesting to see the decisions from guys like Noah Shannon, Joe Evans, Logan Lee. Those guys are eligible for another year. So what will they do? It'll be interesting to see. But my point is, Phil is going to keep this defensive line deep, keep his roster stacked, and I have no reason to think this team, with guys like Thompson, who will probably be semi-plug-and-play-esque, I have no reason to think that they won't be really good across the board again next year, regardless of what the offense does.
Erica, we thank you so much for the super chat that I, unfortunately, with the click of a mouse, wiped off the screen. But thank you, Erica, for that. Yes, Iowa, you could be Northwestern. Yes, there are definite issues there that we can address during the offseason when we have plenty of time to talk other teams in the Big Ten Western Division. Just one more point that I'd like to make about Charlie Jones, because I know that I bring this up, and I'm sure I've driven Corey crazy on occasion by sending him a DM from time to time just to let him know what Charlie Jones is doing that particular Saturday. But this guy is going to be the answer to a trivia question. What player has moved from one team in a division to another whose career has exploded, and the team that he left remained this inept on offense? It's just
that question is never going to be formulated on Trivial Pursuit.
I'll have to figure out a better way to word it, but it's a little wordy.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a unique situation. And speaking of Iowa, and speaking of players jumping from team within a division, how about TJ Hawkinson today being dealt by the Lions to the Vikings. It's kind of an
I saw
interesting
that.
situation. So the former first-round Iowa tight end will now be playing up in Minneapolis. So that will be intriguing. But yeah, and Charlie, Purdue struggled Saturday. O'Connell threw three picks. He still caught 10 balls for like $105. So I have a hard time seeing him being shut down by the Iowa defense on Saturday. And maybe they do. I mean, he has been shut down once or twice. What was the game that I can't remember who it was they played that he basically did nothing, but it's been few and far between. He's been basically consistent throughout the entire year. He's near the tops in almost every category. I went through this with Don Patterson Saturday during the post-game show. We're talking yards per game, receptions per game, receiving touchdowns. He's the only receiver. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson is pretty high on that list as well. And they're a kid from Tennessee. But I mean, for the most part, Charlie Jones appears to be, as far as stat stuffers, he is the guy. And it does beg the question as we get closer to the end of the year and NFL mock drafts become more prevalent. Where is he at? I know you don't claim to be a draft expert. Certainly I don't either. But is there any way he doesn't get drafted? I mean, I just don't see with this type of production with his speed that he wouldn't be drafted.
He gets drafted. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he would not have been drafted as a specialist at Iowa. So, he made the right decision, and this is exactly why he went to Purdue. And look, Iowa will be motivated, but so will Charlie Jones and so will Tyrone Tracy, because they want to beat if they were going back to Iowa City, they'd really want to perform. But I think there's no question, even in Ross-Ade, they want to beat their former team. And Tracy, remember, you could argue that Tracy just lost playing time. Now, he dropped a lot of passes, did not play well with his opportunities last year, and that's on him. But he also lost snaps. So he's been kind of the unspoken. I mean, nobody's really talking about Tyrone Tracy. Maybe the attention is, they hone in on Charlie Jones, and maybe Brom dials some stuff up for Tracy that we don't think is possible. That's conceivable as well.
The only wide receivers that get drafted to the NFL that catch 20 or 25 passes a season are physical specimens that NFL draft personnel managers in the NFL can project to want to mold and tap out the potential, but they're looking for production. And Charlie Jones has done just that. One other guy that's going to be fun to watch on the Purdue offense against this Iowa defense, because Iowa is certainly not afraid of contact or facing stout running games, but this Devin Mockabee, this guy runs about as violently as anyone you're going to see in college football. He may not be the most talented back that Purdue or Iowa's going to face this season, but yeah, he is a violent runner who looks for contact.
Good point. And although Iowa's relatively healthy up front, they're still down Justin Jacobs at their Leo linebacker spot. So, no, you're right. Mockabee runs a little bit like Xander Horvath, how he ran the football. I mean, just both physical guys. And let's not forget, now Iowa was down in 2020. This is what was ironic about that game. Seth Benson had COVID. Jack Campbell was out. I don't know if he had COVID or he was injured. But they were down their 2-star linebackers. We didn't know they were going to be stars at the time. But certainly they were depleted at linebacker in that game. Barrington Wade was left on an island way too many times against David Bell. But my point being, Xander Horvath had a big game in 2020. So if Purdue can get the run game going, and Iowa can't run the ball, you combine that with what Purdue can do through the air and what Iowa struggles to do through the air. I still believe this is a mismatch. Maybe I'm just wallowing in my own misery here, but I just think that Iowa does not match up well with Purdue. And you can say, well, you're just stating the obvious based on the last several years. Well, sure. But I mean, none of those things have changed. If anything, the offense has gotten worse in pass pro, with the exception being last week. Worse as far as consistently opening up holes Tyler Goodson had over 1,000 yards last year despite their issues up front. So the matchup just to me does not set well.
There are definite comparisons to be made between Mockabee and Horvath. And Horvath, I caught him just a week or two. He's with somebody in the NFL. I saw him.
He is.
And I forget who it was. But I saw him on the field. He's playing for somebody, a key role in an offense.
Isn't that crazy?
Honestly, I don't want to Who is it?
I'm just gonna say real quick, isn't that crazy though? Like Horvath was a guy that I'd never really heard of. You know, he's kind of just was he a converted fullback or was he always a running back?
He looks like a fullback, plays like a fullback.
Yeah. But the fact that Iowa can't seem to get a running back to stick in the league, and Purdue that doesn't run the football, like last year they really didn't run the football at all. Xander Horvath's playing in the league.
And playing. Yeah.
Incredible. It really is.
But I'll say this about Maccabee. Horvath is one of those guys that is just big and strong and just leans on defenders and just kind of pushes and leans. This Maccabee guy is like violent. Like he explodes into tacklers.
Yeah. So there's no question about it. Iowa's defensive line and its linebacking core going to be sore after this game. And remember, Purdue go back to the bye week. Purdue had an extra week to heal up. Even the guys that maybe don't end up on the injury report that are beat up midway through a season, those guys had that extra week, and Maccabee included. So yeah, no, Maccabee's one guy I've watched a little bit. Watched him against Nebraska extensively, and I've tried to watch Purdue at every opportunity I could this year. But Iowa's going to have an issue if they can't stop the run.
Maccabee's averaging a full yard better than Xander Horvath over the course of his career, 5.4 to 4.4.
I believe he's a walk-on. Is he a walk-on right now?
Yes, he is.
There you go. And I believe
always wanted to play at Purdue and was recruited and signed at Air Force. Played there a little bit.
And which former, let's do a little trivia for you, Mark, before you get to Erica's Super Chat. Which former fullback also transferred to a Big Ten team from Air Force and became a workhorse in the Big Ten in the last 10 years?
I'm guessing he transferred to Iowa.
Oh.
No?
Yes. No, you're right. So who is it?
I don't know.
You ever heard of the term Weissman for Heisman?
Sure. I don't know that I knew that at the time that he transferred from. Yeah. We're going back about 10 years.
We are. 2012 was, you're right, exactly. 2012 was his coming out party. Iowa was decimated at running back. They went 4-8, and he ended up being a decent. He was a great I shouldn't say decent. He was a really good workhorse for what they needed through 2013 and then into 14.
Erica, we appreciate you being here. And Erica, she basically is bringing up something that I saw a number of places on social media. Didn't know what the source was, didn't really track it down. But do you give any credence to the rumors that Brian Ferentz already got a job in the NFL for next year?
No, I don't. I think that was Pete Thamel that said something. I read the article. So 247 Sports has a tendency to write articles. And I don't mean to rip 247 Sports. I know you work with some of these guys, Mark, but they tend to write articles that are based on nothing. Like Pat McAfee can make a comment on College Game Day in passing, and all of a sudden it becomes a clickbait article. And I kind of get tired of that type of journalism. But the article that I saw, probably Erica's referencing, was some reporter that mentioned, don't be surprised. That was the terminology. Don't be surprised if Brian ends up in the league. Well, I could have said that. I mean, don't be surprised. That's not reporting anything. So that kind of went viral. I'm sure that I guarantee you that those conversations have been had behind closed doors between Brian and Kirk. Absolutely. Because they understand that if things go down the tube, there are very few options available. So remember, there was those rumors were going around last spring. I still think Brian's hard to hire given his on-the-field performance issues, his lawsuit that's open against him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the league. But at this point, I think those are probably just people trying to assume things or jump to conclusions that are not based on concrete evidence. That's just my hunch on it.
Yeah, unfortunately, from a journalistic standpoint in sports and probably in news as well, we report on things that no longer does there need to be action before we report on what was done. We report on what people say.
Right,
There's
exactly.
a lot of re-reporting on what people say, what they tweet.
You know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start going on my website, and I'm going to start writing articles based on what 247 Sports writes. Like the headline's going to be 247 Sports publishes article claiming that Brian Ferentz might end up in the NFL. And the whole news story is not going to be about Brian maybe going to the NFL. It's not even, it might include the original quote, but it'll mostly be about the story itself. The fact that 247 Sports published this story, what time it was published, who published it.
You'll fit right in. That's the way it's done these days.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ryan Day made a comment supposedly today because I saw it tweeted out by someone that when asked about Jackson Smith and Jigba, that he absolutely has a chance to play this season. Now, I pointed out that that is a completely meaningless statement. Not that he's absolutely going to play. He absolutely has a chance to play. Well, throw out the term absolutely. He still is in question. He has a chance. He's not been ruled out for this season. It's a meaningless statement.
Yeah. Addison Estringa, Iowa's fifth string running tight end on the roster, absolutely has a chance because if the four guys in front of him all get hurt, he's probably playing. But I saw your response to that tweet. That's the kind of reporting that wears on my nerves.
Corey, if you made any bowl projections for the Hawkeyes, if you looked that far into it.
No, because I think there's a better chance they don't make a bowl game than there is that they do. That's how I feel. So,
they only have to go 2-2.
Right. I think there's a better chance. I shouldn't say that. I think there's a better chance they end up at 6-6 than there is they end up at 7-5. Maybe I would reevaluate now after the win against Northwestern. At one time I had said, looking at the schedule, that there was probably a better chance they missed a bowl game. I mean, what game are they favored in, Mark? You can say that all you want. Well, they only got to go 2-2. What games are they favored in down the stretch these last four?
Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue, Wisconsin.
Nebraska. That's the only game they're favored in. So
they're playing Minnesota at home, correct?
No, that game's in Minneapolis. They're playing Wisconsin at home. So no, I'm just there's a chance they go 5-7 still. There is a chance they go 5-7. And I would love if they have to go, if they're going to go to a bowl game, Nashville would be a great destination. I don't know. Is there a bowl? Is the Duke's Mayo Bowl? That's better than Nashville, right? I don't even know the pecking order in these Big Ten bowl games anymore.
Shoot, to go to Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Bowl versus Nashville for the Music City Bowl, one's like a 6 seed and one's a 7 seed. Does it really matter? I would say based on past history and the naming of the bowl that the Music City Bowl sounds better to go to the Music City Bowl. That was the Tennessee Purdue game last year.
Right. Yeah. And was the Duke's Mayo Bowl, was that the Wisconsin game? Or was that the year before that Mertz?
Wisconsin. No, they went out west to play Arizona State.
So it must have been the year before. Wasn't it Mertz that dropped the trophy and broke it?
Yeah, against Wake Forest. Yeah.
It was the year prior. Okay.
No Big Ten team made the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That was South Carolina and North Carolina last year. I was looking for the Big Ten bowl lineup for this year because I was curious to see what the last bowl. I believe it's still in Detroit, the Quick Lane Bowl. That's what we're looking at. Yeah, there we go. The Quick Lane Bowl, Big Ten and MAC.
If you could see you just gave me goosebumps when you said that. Shivers. Just thinking about. I
almost would rather not go to a bowl than be playing in Detroit on the day after Christmas. That's when it is. The day after Christmas, I took a shot there, and you're playing a 3rd seed from the MAC.
You took a shot as in a
in
shot
of the date of the game.
Oh, I thought you meant you had to take a shot before watching the Detroit game.
I watch all the bowl games as best I can.
I do too, but I ain't going up no Detroit. Would you pay me to go up to Detroit and cover that game?
If we had the budget to do so, sure. Okay. I would.
You let me know if that happens. If anybody who's listening to this show, if they want to fund coverage from the Detroit Bowl, send it to MarkRogersTV, and Mark, you send me up to Detroit, and I'll make sure I take my bulletproof vest, and we'll get it done. You're
reminding me that in a safer time, I turned down an opportunity to cover a bowl game in Detroit. That would have been it was an Ole Miss Marshall game with Randy Moss playing. But I said, no, thanks. The other guy can go.
So what was it called at the time? Was it the Little
That's
City?
What I was just trying to remember. It was the Motor City Bowl. Yes.
Motor City.
It's a
Don't
Motor
you
City
think it would
Bowl.
be clever? I'm serious. I mean this seriously, because marketing is all over the place right now, right? There's some guy for Nebraska before the season started, some wide receiver. I don't even know if he's playing, but his name is DeColdest, and he did some.
Well, yeah.
He did some.
Oldest Crawford.
Yeah,
Yeah.
DeColdest. He did some commercial for
Yeah.
a heating and cooling company. Great idea, great marketing. Don't you think it'd be smart for a bowl game like that, like the Detroit Bowl or one of those obscure bowls that nobody cares about? Don't you think it would be clever for a company like American Standard or Clorox or one of these toilet companies to sponsor that bowl game? Don't you think that'd be clever? I think it'd be great. I think it'd be one of those, I don't say reverse psychology, but you know where I'm going with this. It would be catchy. People would be talking about it. Believe me, there'd be 247 sports people writing about it.
Well, your angle is that every bowl season there are jokes made about this bowl's so bad it's the toilet bowl kind of thing, or these two teams should be playing. Well, to add to your idea, we shouldn't have bowl eligible teams playing in that bowl game. That bowl game should be played between the two lousiest teams in the country. The two teams with the lowest win totals in the country should be playing in the toilet bowl.
Do you think teams would do that? Because people like Kirk might do that because he values bowl prep and the practice leading up to bowl games. So maybe they would. But again, let's think about this. Toto, American Standard, Kohler, Delta, Mansfield, Niagara, Clorox, Great Value. We go down the list. But no, that's my point. I think that should be a thing.
Yeah, and it should be between 2-10 UMass and 1-11 UTEP or whomever.
Yeah.
That's who should be playing in the bowl.
Here we go, Mark. Here we go. This is where you come into play with your voice and with your pull in college football. This is where you come into play.
If I'm going to dive into the bowl system, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have the Voice of College Football Bowl. I wonder how much money we would have to put up as a sponsor.
I wonder.
Maybe
if you look at it,
wonder if that would get it done.
I'm amazed that companies like Duke's Mayo are willing to sponsor a bowl. I mean, they're selling
the college football bowl.
And for the record, I know we're talking about these businesses and we're not charging them for it. But Duke's Mayo, does anybody actually still eat Duke's Mayo?
I've never had it in my life.
Well, I don't think I have either. People typically eat Kraft or they eat Miracle Whip, right?
Yeah.
So, or you buy a generic like Great Value. I don't know why.
Which are the same thing. What you just named are the same. Kraft is Miracle Whip. Hellman's, you've got Hellman's, and then you've got Miracle Whip. Yeah.
Okay. Hellman's, that's the one. So, but I'm just surprised that companies like that can afford to sponsor these bowl games, because I guarantee you it's got to be at least 8 figures, don't you think? Or is it more?
7 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, Voice of College Football Bowl, but that cannot be associated with the American Standard Bowl. We need to, and at least American Standard sounds sort of powerful, right? Until a person realizes, oh, that's the American Standard that produces porcelain. That's when we realize that it's between UTEP and UMass, or UMass and Colorado State.
That's what it's come to, folks, here on Hawkeyes Live, talking about Iowa possibilities in bowl games and then trying to conjure up another option. Okay.
And it's getting dark in here, Mark. I don't know why the sun's good. This just proves the days are getting shorter, and we're about to go into the dark times of winter here in Iowa, because I used to be able to do this whole show with natural light. And I think starting next week, we're going to have to do something different.
And you want us to fund a trip to Detroit. Why don't we send you a light first?
All right.
We'll do that first. Send you a light
first. Then we can talk about Detroit. Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Okay, one more thing. Do you like mayonnaise?
Now, there's a difference, obviously, between the salad dressing and the mayonnaise. They're often confused, and I confuse them as well. I like Hellman's. more than I like Miracle Whip. I grew up on Miracle Whip, but once I had Hellman's, it's funny you say that because I'll drop another name. I just got a sub at Jimmy John's.
Oh, why are we doing this? First of all, Jimmy John's should be sponsoring the show. Second of all, I love Jimmy John's. I can't believe you said that. So a lot of people that I know rip Jimmy John's all the time. All right. There's something about their BLT. And you may say it's just a crap sandwich. Yeah. And look, it's what, white bread and lettuce. I don't know that they do anything special, but man, there is nothing like a BLT from Jimmy John's and salt and vinegar chips. That combination, Mark. Do you like the salt and vinegar chips too?
I don't like salt and vinegar chips. I'm not a big chips guy. I will eat chips, but they have to be like a standard Ruffles with French onion dip.
Oh, you gotta have the dip with it. Because I like the salt and vinegar chips, and you've had their cookies. They've got good cookies there as well. Like I said, they should be paying us because we're giving them free advertising here.
Yeah, and I'll throw one more out there. If you go on to Insomnia Cookies,
we have an Insomnia here in Ames. That's amazing. You have Insomnia. So I didn't even know it's a national chain. You have an Insomnia out in Ohio. Is that right?
It's right next to the Jimmy John's, which is right around the corner from me. And I was tempted to go to Insomnia Cookies. I ended up stopping by Aldi's, another name drop, should be sponsoring us, and got some Chips Ahoy. That's what I did. Another name drop should be sponsoring us.
Wait a minute. You passed up Insomnia for Chips Ahoy.
Okay, it wasn't like the intent to get like really good cookies and enjoy them. It was, you know what? I've got to go to the store anyway. So I'm not going to go to Insomnia Cookies. I'm going to go the cheap route.
Just assure me that you didn't get the red box of Chips Ahoy, right? You got the...
I do on occasion, but I prefer the blue and I prefer the original. But the chewy ones are good.
Yeah. The chewy ones taste like old rubber. Listen, the crunchy ones are really good, especially a little milk. The chewy ones, I just about throw up.
No. I'm a dessert connoisseur, especially when it comes to chocolate. So
when you can bend a cookie into like the shape of a tube or a funnel, that means there's some stuff in that cookie that shouldn't be allowed to get through the laws in this country.
It's a half-baked cookie. They go a little light. They have taken advantage of people's people like to eat cookie dough and like that flavor of the cookie dough. So that's a very lightly baked cookie. So it's still bendable.
And just for the record, we recently got a crumble cookie here in Ames. So crumble cookie, if you probably don't have those out there. I don't even know. I think it's a national chain, but they're kind of becoming the trendy thing here in the state of Iowa, Mark. So crumble cookie, very rich cookies, very a little bit too rich for my taste. But you mentioned Insomnia, and that kind of triggered my memory on this. But anyways, I know people are fascinated by this conversation, and we're talking about mayo. And what just real quick, what were you going to say about Jimmy John's? Did you enjoy your Jimmy John's?
There was a reason I brought up Jimmy John's. Well, with the mayo. That I went down to Jimmy John's, and I always ask for extra Hellman's packets.
Oh, really? You get the extra packets? Yeah. Okay.
I do.
Do you eat there in the store, or do you take it to go? Usually go to the drive-thru?
I take it to go. I don't think I've ever... Well, I shouldn't say that. There was a time I remember being in college that between my drive from college to my job, I would sit in a restaurant. I had a favorite chicken place that I would go. I'd get my sports section. I'd kind of camp out and eat dinner. But other than that, I don't go to restaurants and eat by myself. I'm not that person that does that.
Okay. Yeah,
I understand. Somebody.
I understand. We have like 5 Jimmy John's here in Ames. So, I mean, if you don't eat Jimmy John's, it's because you don't like Jimmy John's. And we have I see Burger in the comment here. Jersey Mike's. We do have a Jersey Mike's. We have Firehouse. I went to Firehouse real quickly. I keep saying one more thing. I went to Firehouse, Mark, and I like Firehouse for the record. I got a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and you're from out east. You understand probably what a real Philly is. I probably don't because I've been in Iowa my whole life. But a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, they ask you if you want I think they say a small or a large sandwich. And I say a large sandwich, right? I don't want a little, I want to actually be full at the end of this, excursion. How much do you think that cost? And this was a year ago. Large Philly cheesesteak sandwich and a bag of chips. I don't even know that I got a drink. Maybe I got a drink.
In Iowa?
Yeah. in Iowa?
At this firehouse, which I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to say $17.
$17. Well, you see, this is the guy this is the guy that releases his picks every week and has a group of subscribers that get your picks every week because you understand the concept of an over-under. You nailed it. You nailed it. It's $17. But Mark, that's a lot of money for a lunch. For a lunch. But cost of meat has gone way up. $17 with a sandwich, chips, and a drink. Insane.
What's insane is you can go to McDonald's now, which of course I know that you turn your nose up to, and I do as well. It's not a good
I go there
meal.
more than
But still, you go to McDonald's. Do you know how much a meal deal at McDonald's is now? It's like $13.
Right. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now here's the deal. McDonald's, get the McDonald's app. Mark, do you have the app on your
No.
phone? Get the app because there's constantly, if you go to McDonald's, and I know you and I both don't love McDonald's, but I end up going there a lot because they have tremendous deals in the app every single day.
That's going to make me go to McDonald's even more, and I don't want to do that.
I understand.
The last time I went to McDonald's, and this is how the state of things in this country, this is not just directed toward McDonald's, but just the way things are in this country now. I go down to the local, this was on a Saturday. So you know what I'm doing on Saturday? I'm watching like 4 games at the same time and the whole deal. So I make sure I stay here. My sister actually brought me lunch. She felt bad for me a few weeks ago. And she's like, I know you're not going to leave to go. So she brought me like this really nice lunch, lasagna, a platter of brownies and all this stuff. So anyway, but on this was just last Saturday. I thought, okay, I'm going to run down real quick. The McDonald's is like a third of the mile away. I go down there, there's a long line, but I thought, okay, I'm still going to wait because it's not going to make sense for me to try to go anywhere else. I get up to the drive-through and there's a sign posted at 8:15 at night when they're supposed to be open until 11:30 that says we close at 9. Well, I look at the clock, it's 8:15. I think there's no issue, but the few cars in front of me had peeled off. So I drive up to there to see what the deal is because they've got a sign posted that says they're closing that night. We apologize, but we have to close at 9 o'clock. I get up, I wait and wait and wait, and I was just going to wait it out. I'm kind of belligerent like that. Like, you need to prove it. You need to show me. You need to tell me that you're closed. I'm not going to just leave.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm knocking on the window.
Yeah, exactly.
I want someone to be a man and actually tell me failed. We failed.
Yes.
We closing early, and we're not just going to ignore you and hope you go away.
Yes. And that's what they finally had to do because I just sat there and I went actually up to the next window where you pick up the food to be with my hands up like, what are you doing? They said, well, we just decided to just close now. Just decided.
Yeah. I remember real quick. I remember in when I grew up in, the McDonald's going there at like, I don't even know, 9 o'clock in the evening. And there were people there waiting for food, but nobody was in the restaurant. And the manager was outside the restaurant. And the reason why he was out, by the way, we've lost like 30 viewers in the last 10 minutes, but that's okay. The guy was outside the restaurant, right? And said, we can't get into the restaurant. This is the manager. And we said, well, what's going on? Well, the last shift manager, the last crew decided to leave a little early and they locked us out and we don't have a key. I mean, stuff like that only happens at McDonald's. But let me just say this, Trosper, in the chat, look at this. I get a free breakfast sandwich every morning in my app. Now, it's
every morning.
You have to buy something. I mean, now the apps seem to be personalized based on your purchasing things and whatnot. So check out the app, Mark. I don't want to deteriorate your health. We need you here talking about football as long as we possibly can. But check out the McDonald's app. That's my final plug for a non-sponsored business.
Have you ever been to Krispy Kreme? Krispy Kreme donuts? Do you know
really
anything
a
about
question?
Krispy
Have
Kreme?
I ever been to Krispy Kreme? Of course I've been to Krispy Kreme.
Well, I didn't know that because they're not everywhere in the country. The only reason I bring that up is somebody told me the other day that Krispy Kreme is going to be selling donuts in McDonald's. McDonald's is going to be selling Krispy Kreme donuts. I don't need that incentive either.
Are you being serious though? That's legit.
That's what I was told.
Because they just brought out McDonald's just came out with the donut. They just came out with a line of bakery items that are not very good and not very cheap. But if they're selling Krispy Kreme, we're all done.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who else really likes Krispy Kreme is Coach John Patterson. Him and I have discussed Krispy Kreme. So if anybody wants to thank John Patterson for all his work.
You have renewed my faith in your dessert taste.
Absolutely.
Because Krispy Kreme is top line.
Of course.
I love Krispy Kreme.
I don't go there, though, Mark, because, well, A, we don't have one in Ames. We do have one about 25 minutes from here down in Ankeny, just outside of Des Moines. But I could sit there and I could eat 8 of those. And that ain't good. I never feel good after do you ever feel good after you eat a donut? Ever?
Well, see, this is the thing about me is that this is either a blessing or a curse. But the way God created me, I have a stomach that is ironclad. Nothing ever bothers my stomach.
Okay. So maybe I'm weird because it's not my stomach that it bothers. I just feel gross afterwards.
Yeah, you're going to get weighed down a little bit by eating on healthy food and just kind of sluggish. Sure, everybody does.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't feel good after you eat, so I just don't eat donuts for the most part. Every time I eat a donut, I regret it.
One donut?
Yes, one donut does it to me. I feel
I've got to eat the 8 donuts that you were talking about to feel like you just said.
I used to. You and I both obviously have a high metabolism because we're not, these morbidly obese people. But my point is, even despite that fact, I don't have any desire to just sit around eating donuts. I used to do that when I was a kid. Sure. I mean, I remember eating. There were nights I'd eat 8 donuts in a night.
Oh, yeah, I would too. I bet if I grabbed the Chips Ahoy, I bet I just, in addition to eating half of my sub, so I saved half for later, I got the full giant Jimmy John's sub. I got the giant sub.
Yeah.
So I ate about half of it. Pardon me?
The gargantuan?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I ate half of it, but then I started in on the Chips Ahoy right before this show, and I bet I ate 14 of them, would be my guess.
14?
Yeah.
Well, that won't top this. I went to Texas Roadhouse once and ate, I believe it was 14 rolls in one sitting. You know those big rolls?
I love those rolls, but 14?
14. That made me sick. I did not feel very good the next day.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Not that I could do that, but I wouldn't want to do that because I would want my steak to be the centerpiece of my meal.
The way I look at it, Mark, and somebody asked earlier, does Corey cut coupons on Sundays? I find that question funny. But here's the deal. I'm the type of person that looks at it and says, I can always take the steak home. They're giving me unlimited rolls, so I'm going to stock up on rolls here at the restaurant. And then if I can't finish my steak, I'll take it at home and enjoy it at home. They're not going to give me rolls to go.
Thus the question about you clipping coupons.
I don't clip coupons. First of all, how do you get coupons anymore? Does anybody subscribe to newspapers anymore? I don't.
Well, no, but you get the coupons through your app, just like
sure.
The comment about the free breakfast sandwich.
But I'm not physically cutting coupons like back in the early 2000s. But anyways, we've lost a ton of viewers over the last.
Yeah, they're dropping off.
20 minutes more. We need to wrap this show up.
There's a small portion of people out there that actually love this kind of conversation, but the vast majority check out.
Yeah.
I want to do our sponsor justice just by reminding everyone that Gene Arthur Associates sponsors this show. They do a phenomenal job, and please get an instant quote by grabbing the link in the description section of any of the videos. And again, remember our ticket giveaway to the final game of the season, Iowa, Nebraska. What you do there is you go to Gene Arthur Associates on Facebook or Instagram, and you like, follow, and share, and you're automatically entered. And also keep in mind, we are at about 13 minutes away from the first college football playoff rankings revealed by ESPN. And for you Iowa fans, let me explain the concept. There's a
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we will go live on the main channel with the watch party. We've done that the last 2 years. A lot of people like it, so we will watch it all together.
Appreciate it as always, Mark. And
thank you, Corey.
We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Sounds good.